Batten down the hatches and take the helm. It's time for adventure, seaside headlines, and a splash of mischief. Welcome to Marine Conservation Happy Hour, where coastal news meets pirate spirit, and every story comes with a twist. And now, your host, Dr. Scarlet Smash and Dr. Kraken McCracken.
This is the Marine Conservation Happy Hour. I'm Dr. Scarlet Smash, and this is Dr. Kraken, and we are your local Florida swashbucklers, bringing you Florida ocean and bay news topics, pirate stories, and shenanigans. Grab your drink and come on board. Well, this is really exciting. I just came back from the night parade, which was so much fun. We are still celebrating Gasparilla events here in Tampa, and it actually ties into our subject today because one of the floats, Dr. Kraken, it looked like it had Anne Bonney and Mary Read on it.
In fact, it looked like it had a statue of you stuck on the front.
And I honestly think that's because I take after these ladies, which we will explain to you why. But that's going to be our subject for today. We're going to talk about pirates, obviously, because we love talking about pirates. And we're going to specifically talk about the lady pirates, famously known as Anne Bonney and Mary Read. And they were pirates of the Caribbean. Now, it's very possible that they went down the coast of Florida.
Oh, it's highly, highly likely that they probably stopped off in Florida and in Tampa Bay. In fact, resupplying their ships, because this was a super hot spot of piracy.
Absolutely. We're talking about the golden age of piracy. This period was between the 1650s and the 1730s, and the Buccaneers were in Tampa, and they were doing their piracy between 1650s and 1680s.
Yeah, Buccaneer basically means Pirates of the Caribbean. And I mean, the history of pirates goes way back to like before the Romans. And there were pirates after the Buccaneers. There were pirates in other parts of the world, particularly Southeast Asia. There were pirates right through the Victorian era and beyond. In the Mediterranean, there were pirates. So pirates carried on elsewhere. It's just that in the Caribbean, it tended to be in this golden age of nearly 100 years. And it's stopped around about, 1730s, as basically anti-pirate fleets started to become more effective. There were stronger navies to deal with the pirates. And so the pirates just became legitimate. They became like government navies.
So let's set the scene. It's 1718, and the sea is full of battlefields between the Spanish ships and pirates. We also had English. We had French.
The Dutch.
The Dutch, they were all trying to take over, and they were fighting for empires. And they were
trying to get all the sick loots from Central and Southern America.
We had gold that was taken from Central America. We had silver that was taken from Peru. So there was a bunch of these ships that were filled with lots of loot. And then they would have to go through these channels through the Caribbean. And they were kind of like
highways. They were basically highway routes. They would follow these channels. They would follow these routes that didn't have rocks that they could hit. They were being blown by very predictable winds. Yeah, wind direction and currents. So they would go out one way to Europe and they would come back another way off the coast of what's now the US. And you had boats going from New Orleans past Florida. You had boats going from Cuba past Florida. You had boats coming from colonies, Dutch and British and Spanish and French colonies in the Caribbean, going up to what would become the US of A past Florida. So Florida really was like a
stop off.
Yeah, it's like a stop off. People would stop off and they get fresh water and they'd get
before
food.
they head out to the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of those highway rest stops, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the most taken shipping lane, actually, I feel like Hemingway, the author Hemingway, was taking this one, Dr. Kraken, which is from Havana, Cuba, all the way to the Keys. And
he would be smuggling absinthe and rum from Cuba into the Florida
alcoholic.
Keys.
Yes, that's for sure. He was also going to a second home. Anyway, so that was a famous route that all these people would ship all of their goods and their loots. And then the pirates knew exactly where to watch out for ships that are passing and then attack them in these routes. Okay. So now we got to get back to Anne Bonney, because I swear they don't have it recorded yet. But Anne Bonney, beautiful red hair. Well, you said allegedly she has red hair.
Allegedly.
Yeah. But she was beautiful, red hair, was born in Ireland, but then eventually lived in North Carolina. And then at some point, she had to get on the ship to come all the way down and start piracy in the Caribbean. She must have gone past or stopped around the Florida coastline at some point. Even though it's not recorded, I believe she was definitely near our waters or even touched land.
Oh, absolutely. Because she, as you said, she came from Ireland. She went up to Charleston in South Carolina. And, you know, when she was a pirate, she went down to the Bahamas. She went backwards and forwards up to the Carolinas. So she would have gone past Florida all the time. Now, you mentioned that she was Irish. So she was born as the illegitimate daughter of a lawyer. So he's actually a pretty
wealthy man,
pretty wealthy guy, and his maid. Now, this lawyer was married, however, and so this caused a little bit of friction. Yeah, a bit of friction with his wife. His wife was the rich one.
Oh my God, what a silly man.
And eventually it just became too much of a scandal. And so he grabbed, to hide the scandal, her father dressed her as a boy and called her Andy Read. So she actually grew up as a boy, and she ended up becoming his lawyer's clerk. So she worked
so he was
for
like
him.
A little helper.
Yeah, basically intern. She was a nepo baby. She, you know, she got the lawyer's job in the lawyer's office. But eventually it just became such a big scandal and this, that, and the other that he moved over to Charleston.
What about the wife?
Oh, left the wife behind.
Oh, my.
Left the wife behind. He ran away from Ireland, left the wife behind. He had some money, so he actually bought a plantation, brought Andy with him, and she was now the daughter, the teenage daughter of a relatively wealthy plantation owner in the Carolinas. And apparently she was, you know, this is where the red hair comes in. She was apparently really feisty.
Yes.
And she would go danger. Out drinking with the boys in the pubs.
Well,
and
she was dressing up like a boy. So why wouldn't she act like a boy and drink with the guys in the pub?
Absolutely. You know, she had spent her, you know, younger teenage years dressed as a boy, hanging out with boys, blah, 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 in Ireland. So, of course, you know, things were a little bit tame for her to be a young lady wearing dresses on the plantation, doing the cotillion and debutante balls and so on.
She obviously didn't want to have anything to do with that.
Absolutely not. So she went out drinking. Apparently, so the story goes, that she even stabbed somebody, would get involved in a lot of fights.
That's right. She apparently did stab someone. There's not much record about that though.
No, it could really just be a legend. But
she did actually marry someone, didn't she? She married a sailor at some point.
Yes,
surprises me.
She married a sailor called Bonny. That's
how she got her last name.
That's how she got her last name. And they moved over, James Bonny, in in fact. My name's Bonny, James Bonny. They moved over to the Bahamas, into Nassau, which was kind of like a pirate republic then. This is where all the pirates would hang out. And so she lived with him for a while, but he was an informant for the governor and he informed on pirates. And so she got pretty fed up with it. Also, apparently he like hit her and beat her and was an alcoholic.
Rude.
And she wasn't going to have, but she fought back. She beat him up back.
I heard that she was a fighter for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Now that makes sense because I was wondering how she decided to leave her husband and fell in love with the magnetic pirate, Captain Calico Jack Rackham.
Oh, now this is interesting. So now Jack Rackham at this time, he'd been a pirate. In fact, he had taken over a ship from the famous pirate captain Charles Vane in 1718 because Charles Vane didn't want to attack a French warship and the crew wanted the sick loots. And so they deposed him and they elected Jack Rackham as their captain. Jack Rackham was a pirate captain for about a year. And then they had one of these to try and reduce piracy. They had like these rounds of pardons. So if you take this pardon and promise not to be a pirate again, you would be forgiven your piracy, and they try to get them to settle down or become regular captains of ships or join the Navy or what have you. So he actually took the pardon.
Maybe because he had a lot of flamboyant colored clothes, maybe that's why Anne Bonney liked him, because he was just well dressed, very colorful.
Well, yeah, he was very well dressed. He was quite well off. He had a pardon. So, you know, the law didn't want him. He moved back to Nassau in the Bahamas and started hanging out with Anne Bonney. And he actually tried to buy Anne Bonney off of her abusive husband, but he wouldn't have anything of it. Whoa. He actually approached the husband and said, you're horrible to Anne. I love her. Okay, I'll give you all this money if you leave her.
Jumped on the ship and left and became part of his crew, huh?
Well, basically, yeah. 17. So he was pardoned. So he wasn't wanted anymore. But in August 1720, he and Anne stole a small, fast ship and then started pirating again.
And she was actually dressed in male clothes, and he was okay with that.
Well, when they were fighting, she dressed in men's clothes, but sometimes she wore women's clothes. In fact, there's legends that people didn't know that she was a woman, that she was portrayed as a man, but there are actually reports of wanted ads for her as a woman, as well as Mary Read. So they knew perfectly well, eventually, that they were both women pirates.
Well, we will have more on Anne Bonney and her fighting friend, Mary Read, after this break.
All hands on deck, raise a glass, and ready the crew. Now, back to Marine Conservation Happy Hour. Bold, briny, and just a bit rebellious. Now, your hosts, Dr. Scarlet Smash and Dr. Kraken McCracken.
Welcome back, and we are talking about the great and famous female pirates, Anne Bonney and Mary Read, and how they met, and what they did together, and how they died.
Or did they?
Oh, exactly. Oh, he did it. He said it. Exactly. How did that happen? That's exciting. So Anne Bonney has left her husband. See you later. Goodbye.
Yep. Run off to sea with the flamboyant Jack Rackham. Now, at Gasparilla, you might have seen Jack Rackham's flag because it's a skull, and instead of crossbones underneath, it's two cutlasses.
Swords, yes.
Two swords. That's so you might have seen that.
Yes. So they didn't actually roam around too much in the Caribbean. Did you know that? Rackham and Bonny, they wanted to go right around a certain channels. And is that how they met?
Now, actually, Jack Rackham, I said he was a pirate captain. He was kind of a lazy pirate captain. in that he tended to like attacking small boats and shipping and fishing vessels and things like that. And I think Bonny sort of pushed him to be a bit more ambitious. And so they're out there. It's 1720. Anne Bonny is on board the boats being like a power wife. You know, come on, get out there, start getting real boats.
Yes, exactly. Let's get some real booty.
And she meets Mark Read. Jack Rackham, well, I say Jack Rackham is probably Anne Bonny and Jack Rackham. They captured a ship, and on board was Mark Read, who wanted to join Jack Rackham's crew. Wasn't having a great time on board this merchant ship. And it turned out that Mark Read was, in fact, Mary Read. Now, Mary has a really, really interesting history. She was born in England, but she wasn't as middle class as Anne Bonny. Anne Bonny was actually probably quite well educated, could read, was a law clerk. So she probably could speak a couple of different languages, you know, gone to school and so on. Mary Read was raised as a boy, like Anne Bonny was, but it was to defraud a relative out of an inheritance. The inheritance was supposed to go to this woman's son. The son had died, so she just dressed up Mary Read as Mark Read, and for her young life, she was basically dressed as a boy and lived as a boy in order to get this inheritance.
But was it really actually a lot of inheritance since she became a pirate?
Yeah, I don't think it was a particularly big inheritance.
Right. But she did serve the European military campaign.
Oh, absolutely. She joined the Navy and joined a naval vessel on a man of war. So it was a frigate. So it was actually quite a big ship, you know, a big ship of war. And then she left and actually joined the army. She joined a Dutch regiment and became a soldier.
So basically, she was a ship hopper.
Yeah. she joined the Navy, quit that, joined the army. And it was while she was in the army, she fell in love with another soldier and eventually revealed her identity as being female. And they married and they opened an inn called the Three Horseshoes.
Oh, well, that sounds fun. Oh my gosh.
She basically then turned back into a woman. So she dressed as a woman, as a wife in this inn, but her husband died soon afterwards and the inn failed. And so basically she was broke. So what she did was she reverted to her identity as Mark Read again and jumped on a merchant ship heading for the West Indies to make her fortune. And this is when she was captured by Calico Jack Rackham and decided she hated being on board one of these merchant ships and she was going to try being a pirate. Yeah. So Mary Read came on board this boat and eventually became friendly with Anne Bonny, and she revealed that she was, in fact, a woman as well. And so the two women ended up fighting together. They would dress up in men's clothes and leap onto other ships and attack them. While she was on the boat, actually, Mary fell in love with one of the crew and had a boyfriend on board the boat. And apparently the two women were pretty effective as pirates. One legend says that Anne Bonny took a seamstress's mannequin, covered it in fake blood, dressed it up, and pretended to murder the mannequin in order to get another ship to surrender.
Oh my!
So they surrendered without having to fire a shot.
See, this is why I take after them. That's so clever.
So eventually they got captured, though, in 1720. And the reason they got captured was pretty much most of the rest of the crew were drunk. They had managed to capture a ship.
They were drunk, and the only two that were actually fighting on the ship were the ladies.
Exactly. Exactly. They were fighting.
The funniest
the rest of the crew had got wasted, and they were really, really frustrated. In fact, Mary Read apparently got so frustrated, she shot one of her crewmates and carried on fighting. They ended up getting captured.
Well, yes, because it's only two against another ship, while all their crew is completely hammered.
That's it. Two against lots. And famously, Anne Bonney's last words to Jack Rackham, before he got executed for being a pirate, was, "I'm sorry to see you here, but if you fought like a man, you would not have been hung like a dog."
Yes. That is so funny. Talk about taking back all her love immediately. She was upset that they got captured, and they were taken to Jamaica.
Yes, that's right. They were caught.
Which was technically a colonial center for Britain, wasn't it, at that time?
That's right. They were caught by a professional pirate hunter, Jonathan Barnett. They were taken to Jamaica, and both women were sentenced to hang, but they said that they were pregnant.
Yes, and so then they would be pardoned.
Well, not pardoned, but they would have a stay of execution until the babies.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious? I didn't know that. I thought that they actually pardoned them.
Oh, no. It gave them a bit of extra time. And I mentioned before that Jack Rackham was pardoned. So every couple of years, there was a new thing where they would pardon pirates in order to get rid of some of them. And, hopefully they would become legal and proper captains, or just settle down with their ill-gotten gains. So saying that you're pregnant gives you another 9 months.
So
and then maybe
that's called pleading the belly.
Yes, maybe you could get a pardon out of it. Unfortunately, Mary Read,
she got sick.
Got sick, died of what's called jail fever, which could have been anything. Quite frankly,
dirtiness, basically.
Dirtiness. We don't know.
Months later, she died.
Yes, but we don't know what happened to Anne
Bonny. No.
But recently, someone discovered a death certificate from Jamaica from about 20 years later of an Anne Bonney. So it looks like she may have survived and
they say that maybe
settled down in Jamaica.
Father actually intervened and paid and helped her get out of jail.
Well, quite possibly. I mean, he was a lawyer.
I know, right?
And a rich, wealthy landowner. But they did find a death certificate for Anne Bonney about 20 years later. So she lived to,
That was in Jamaica?
In Jamaica, yeah.
So she stayed in the same country that she was captured? Really?
Well, there's also a legend that she went back to the Carolinas.
Yes.
As well.
South Carolina.
But I don't think South Carolina was big enough for
for Anne Bonney. I know.
For Anne Bonney, yes.
Exactly.
I think she's too big for Charleston.
But apparently they say that she could have remarried and she lived until she was 80 years old.
Well, what I heard was that the death certificate, she was about 40 or 50 in Jamaica. So
well, which story do we want to think about? Do we want to think about her being able to leave in Jamaica and then live her quiet life until she's 80 years old? Or
I like the idea that she did have a baby with Jack Rackham, and there are some descendants of Jack Rackham and Anne Bonney out there somewhere, maybe in Jamaica, maybe in the Carolinas, but that would be pretty cool.
And what makes Anne Bonney so incredibly influential is the fact that she lived during a time when women had no legal power.
Oh, absolutely.
But on the ship, she could vote. She could carry weapons. She could stand during this trial and be unafraid.
She defended the ship with the only other woman on board against attack. She was actually pretty effective, suddenly it sounds like a better life than being a debutante in South Carolina.
But actually, how much of this is actually true?
Well, a lot of this is based on a 1724 book, The General History of the Pirates, which was written pretty soon after Mary Read and Anne Bonney were captured. But there are records of these two women both being captured and being sentenced. There is a death certificate for Mary Read. There are wanted notices for these two women pirates. So they, as I said, they knew that they were women. So there definitely is paperwork saying that these two women existed. They were pirates. They were relatively effective pirates. And we have that in historical documentation.
Hope you enjoyed our shenanigans. If you want to hear more, please find us on our podcast, Marine Conservation Happy Hour.